Welcome to Proven's Garage. Today, we're going to build a new fuel tank for Maricart. Now, I'm very much ready to start a new project, but I can't just leave this one sitting here unfinished. I'd really like to finish things, so we're going to do that. So the fuel tank on this thing, well, not that one. The fuel tank on this thing from the TL1000 just won't stop leaking. I've tried to fix it multiple times, so I'm just going to build one. As you can see, I've already mocked one up out of cardboard. There is a little bit of interference here from this hose. I mean, it can flex out of the way. That wouldn't really be a problem, but I think I'm still going to notch this out and put a little piece of pipe in there to give it a little groove to fit around this hose. And I'm going to make it out of some 16 gauge stainless steel so they don't have to worry about corrosion, which is always a problem in a lot of motorcycle gas tanks. Unless they're made out of something else, they always rust. So we're going to nip that one in the bud. So I'm going to cut this stuff out with my CNC plasma blaster. I already got everything modeled up. And so I'm just going to cut these pieces out, tack it together, and we'll go from there. Got everything cut out, cleaned it all up. I think it's gonna look pretty good. So on this one, there was a couple gouges in the material. This used to be a stainless steel table. So kind of repurposing some material. That's what I kind of like to do, especially because it saves me money. I think I paid $20 for a 3 by 8 foot table. A lot of material for $20.
Why don't you put your money where your mouth is, huh?
Anyway, had to repair this one. There was a couple like gouges in it, so I had to weld it, and it kind of warped a little bit. But I don't think that's going to be a problem. As I start putting this together, it should kind of straighten out. Maybe. But the bottom and the top I made as one piece that I'm going to bend on my Harbor Great brake. Woo! And that's mainly to save welds and to, I don't know, add some strength. But I'm going to get these in the brake. And then hopefully get the angles pretty close. Hopefully not screw it up. All right, we got everything bent mostly in shape. I mean, they're pretty damn close. So anything else I can just bend a little bit as I need to while I'm tacking it together. But as you can see, we got our point for our fuel pump to go on the bottom. We're just going to use the factory fuel pump from the TL1000. I'm going to make another flange to go on the back here and then weld that on. And the flange is going to have threaded holes in it for it to bolt to, but those holes won't go all the way through the tank, so that won't be a leaking problem. And then we got a hole for a filler neck. And I'm just going to be using a filler neck that was off of a Sea-Doo. I just had it laying around, and it's going to work. Mostly. Maybe. Probably. It's going to be fine. Alright, so I got the flange for the fuel pump mounted on here. And the toughest part of this was having to weld the entire inside seam. Now, if I were to redesign this again and think about it a little bit more than I did this time, I would have made the inside edge of this top piece a little bit larger than the hole that is in the main tank itself, and that would have given me a little more of a flange to weld onto. But I was able to get it, and it should seal, and that will prevent any gas from being able to leak out of these threads here. And then as you can see on the outside, I just did a couple little about 1-inch welds all the way around, and I could go back and weld all the way around this thing, but I don't really need to because this whole inside flange is welded. So now I'm going to weld up the rest of it, which is going to be a lot of welding, but it shouldn't be too bad. The main thing that's kind of tough with this is really thin material, so it's not going to be pretty welds like those, but they shouldn't be too bad, hopefully. So let's see. We'll just get it welded up in, oh, well, that was way easier than actually welding it. Alright, well, as you can see, I just thought I haven't done enough dumb stuff today, so I decided to go ahead and weld the whole thing around. So the main reason I didn't want to at first is because I didn't want to jack these holes up that are threaded. And then I just kind of got cocky and went for it. I haven't tested to see if they got messed up yet, but if I have to, I can get a bottoming tap and go back down in there and rethread them. But for the most part, welds turned out pretty okay. Well, I'd like to say that this thing is done, but clearly it isn't. I still got to do my filler neck. I got to make some mounts, some brackets to mount it to the buggy itself. And I also got to cut into the side here and make a nice little notch out of there to clear the radiator hose. And that part's scaring me just a little bit. I mean, it'll probably be fine. I just got to be careful. It just sucks to have, like, you know, things all welded together. It looks pretty good. Just don't want that to be the thing that screws up. But I think it's going to be okay. So if you're wondering how I figured out how to cut these pieces out, this correct geometry, I actually modeled it in CAD, and then I basically made a plane here at a 20-degree angle and cut right down through this. And then I made some drawings of those views and cut those pieces out so that I could know exactly what angles I needed. You can try to wing it if you want. I mean, it's metal, right? You can always add more. But I'm gonna tackle that next because it's a little sketchy, but I just want to get it out of the way. Alright, our fit up is really close. I need to pull it into place just a little bit. But as you can see, I left it a little bit bigger. I didn't go all the way to my trace line. And the reason I did that is I'm going to get it where I want it, tack it in place in several spots, and then I'm going to go back and just grind the rest off until it's flush, and then weld the rest of the way on. And that way it'll fit perfect. So, I mean, at least that's what I think I'm going to do. Let's see what happens. Well, I just took this puppy to Grind Town. She's nice and smooth. So now I can finish out this weld. Got a little thin down here, but that's okay. Just gotta be a little careful when I'm welding that. I think we're looking pretty good. Alright, got this thing all welded up. Got a little rowdy down here where it got thin. but I was able to get it filled in, and it looks okay. Whatever, it works. It did kind of warp this panel a bit, but I don't really care. So the next thing I did was make some brackets. So I'm going to reuse the tank brackets that were on the original TL1000R tank, mainly because I already had this mounted on the Buggy, and it has rubber isolators in it. And up front, I'm going to use the same rubber isolators that were on the front of the tank. Probably a good rule of thumb to try to use some rubber isolators for your tank. The less you can agitate the fuel, the better. It's not really going to help a lot, but it'll do something. And it's also going to help keep stress out of the tank itself. Keep it from maybe cracking or something like that. So it's fitting up pretty nice. In the back, I made it so that it does kind of adjust a little bit. But in the front, I'm going to make it so it hard bolts to this bar. And rather than putting a bolt all the way through this bar, I'm going to make it a little bit easier on myself, so I only have to take a bolt out from the top and not hold a nut on the bottom. Now, you might be wondering,
What kind of wizardry are you gonna do now?
so I recently purchased a riv nut gun, and they're not that expensive, especially if you get them from China,
I'm uncomfortable.
and they are really, really handy. So I'm going to put these guys in, and we'll see how that goes real quick. So these things are super easy to install. You just drill a hole that's the same diameter as the bottom side of your rib nut. You screw it onto the rib nut gun. You got to have this thing extended when you do it. Insert in hole. And then you just crimp it. That's all there is to it. Boom. We got a rivet and a nut.
Wait, so what is it, a rivet or a nut?
Awesome. All right, moment of truth. I haven't started this thing in months, so don't expect it to go flawlessly. I mean, for all I know, there could be an injector that's stuck or something. But we're gonna try it, see what happens. We got fuel pump. Let's cycle that a few times. Promising.
I'm uncomfortable.